Here is something I hear from patients all the time, and I want to know if it sounds familiar to you. You wake up in the morning, and before you even get out of bed, there it is, that heavy, thick sensation sitting at the back of your throat. You clear it. You get up, make your tea or coffee, and within 30 minutes, it is right back. You clear it again before a phone call. You clear it after a meal. You carry lozenges in your pocket. You have gone through more honey and warm drinks than you can count. And still, it never fully goes away. At some point, maybe a friend or even a doctor shrugged and said something like, "Oh, that is just part of getting older. You have to expect things like that." And you walked away feeling like you had been handed a life sentence rather than an answer. I want to be very straightforward with you today. That kind of dismissal is not good medicine, and it is not something I accept for my patients. Persistent mucus in the throat is not an inevitable consequence of aging. It has real, identifiable causes, and more importantly, those causes respond to targeted, practical approaches that most people have never been told about. Today, I am going to walk you through 4 specific reasons that chronic throat mucus develops, particularly in adults over 50, that rarely get the attention they deserve. And I will give you a clear, actionable plan you can begin putting into practice starting tonight. Stay with me through this entire video, because the cause I find most consistently surprises people is coming up shortly, and it may completely change the way you think about what has been happening in your body. If you enjoy straightforward, evidence-informed health information that helps you live with more energy, more comfort, and better quality of life as you get older, consider subscribing to Vital Health Insights and joining our growing community. We are glad you are here. Before I get into the 4 causes, I want to give you a brief but important piece of context, because understanding this one thing will help everything else I say today make far more sense. Mucus is not the problem. I know that might sound counterintuitive when you have been dealing with an uncomfortable throat for weeks or months or even years, but hear me out because this genuinely matters. Your body produces mucus continuously, every single day, and it does so because mucus is one of your most valuable protective systems. It catches airborne particles, dust, bacteria, and viruses before they can travel deeper into your lungs. It keeps the delicate tissue lining your airways moist and protected. It is, in a very real sense, your respiratory system's first and most constant defense. The issue is not that your body is making mucus. The issue is when that mucus changes character, when it becomes thick, dense, and slow-moving instead of thin and easily cleared, when it begins to accumulate in the throat rather than draining quietly and naturally the way it is designed to do. And here is why this becomes more common as we get older. The small, hair-like structures that line the airways, called cilia, whose entire job is to sweep mucus upward and out of the system, become less active over time. The muscles involved in swallowing work less efficiently. The lymphatic system, which helps drain congestion from tissues, operates at a somewhat slower pace than it did in earlier decades. The result is that irritants that might have been handled quickly and silently at age 40 can produce a much more noticeable and persistent response at 65 or 70. This is not destiny, but it is context. And it explains why the 4 causes I am about to describe tend to have such a pronounced effect in older adults. Cause number 1, silent reflux. This is the cause that surprises my patients more than almost anything else I discuss with them. And it is also, in my clinical experience, one of the most frequently missed explanations for persistent throat mucus in adults over 50. Most people are familiar with acid reflux in its more obvious form. The burning discomfort in the chest after a heavy meal, the sour sensation that rises after lying down too quickly. That version is hard to ignore. But there is another form of reflux that produces almost none of those classic digestive symptoms. In this version, stomach acid travels all the way up through the esophagus and reaches the throat and the voice box. Because the throat tissue is considerably more sensitive to acid than the lower esophagus, even very small amounts of acid making contact with it cause irritation and inflammation. And the throat's response to that irritation is entirely logical from a biological standpoint. It produces extra mucus to coat and protect the inflamed area. Your body is doing exactly what it is supposed to do. The problem is that if the acid keeps reaching the throat night after night, the mucus production keeps getting triggered, and no amount of throat clearing addresses the root cause. What makes this particularly easy to miss is the absence of heartburn. Many people assume that if their chest feels fine, reflux cannot be involved. But silent reflux, as it is called clinically, often causes no chest discomfort at all. Instead, the hallmarks are a throat that feels worse in the morning than at any other point in the day, a subtle change in voice quality, perhaps a slight roughness, especially before the throat has been cleared, and the sensation of something sitting in the back of the throat that simply will not shift. Two practical changes make a meaningful difference here. The first is giving your stomach time to empty before you lie down. Aim to finish your last meal or substantial snack at least 3 hours before going to bed. When digestion is still actively underway and you recline, the physical position makes it much easier for stomach contents to travel upward. 3 hours of upright time after eating significantly reduces that risk. The second is gently elevating the head of your bed. And I want to be specific here, because this matters. Adding an extra pillow does not accomplish what we are after. It simply bends the neck forward and can actually make things worse. What you want is to raise the physical head of the bed frame itself by several centimeters using a wedge placed under the legs of the headboard. This creates a slight but consistent incline across the whole body, so gravity keeps stomach contents where they belong throughout the night. One additional note worth mentioning: if you regularly take anti-inflammatory medication for joint pain, back discomfort, or arthritis, this is worth raising specifically with your physician in relation to your throat symptoms. Certain commonly used medications in this category can relax the valve between the stomach and esophagus, making upward travel of acid easier, while also reducing the stomach's natural protective coating. If you are taking these regularly, that conversation with your doctor could be genuinely valuable. Number 2, chronic low-level sinus inflammation. When most people think about sinus problems, they picture severe pressure headaches, completely blocked breathing, and the kind of congestion that announces itself loudly. And so when their sinuses are only mildly inflamed, they often do not make the connection at all. But chronic, low-grade sinus inflammation, the kind that does not announce itself dramatically, can produce a steady, quiet draining of excess mucus down the back of the throat, particularly during the nighttime hours when you are horizontal. You fall asleep, the mildly inflamed sinuses drain slowly downward by gravity, and you wake in the morning with that thick, heavy feeling that sends you straight to the bathroom to clear your throat before you can even think about breakfast. Many people in this situation reach for antihistamine tablets from the pharmacy, assuming they have some ongoing allergy. And while antihistamines can reduce mucus production temporarily, they do so by drying it out. And dried, thickened mucus that is difficult to move is often more uncomfortable and harder to clear than the original symptom. The approach that I find consistently effective for this cause is regular saline nasal rinsing. A simple, warm saline solution, made with previously boiled and cooled water and a small amount of plain non-iodized salt, used once or twice daily to gently flush each nostril. This washes away the irritants and allergens that are driving the inflammation, reduces the congestion that is causing the post-nasal drip, and keeps the mucus thin enough to be moved and cleared naturally. I want to address one important safety detail here. Always use water that has been boiled and then allowed to cool to a comfortable warm temperature, not water straight from the tap. Tap water in many areas contains trace organisms that are perfectly safe when swallowed but are best kept out of the nasal passages. Boiled and cooled water eliminates that concern. You can also add the tiniest pinch of baking soda to your rinse solution alongside the salt. Baking soda helps neutralize any acidity in the nasal passages and appears to support more effective thinning of the mucus compared to salt alone. Cause number 3, medication side effects. This is the cause that most patients have genuinely never considered. And yet once I explain the connection, it makes complete sense. Several categories of medication that are commonly prescribed to adults in their 50s, 60s, and 70s can contribute directly to persistent throat mucus. Some do so by promoting the kind of reflux we discussed earlier. Others work differently. They cause the mucus in the airway to become thicker and stickier as a side effect of how they interact with the body's normal fluid balance. And one particular category is especially worth knowing about: a class of blood pressure medications, widely prescribed and generally very effective, has a well-documented side effect in some individuals: a persistent throat irritation, a dry or scratchy sensation, and increased mucus production. The mechanism involves a naturally occurring compound that these medications allow to accumulate in the body, and in people who are sensitive to it, this compound triggers an irritation response in the throat. If you are taking blood pressure medication and you look back at when your throat symptoms began or significantly worsened, and that timing lines up with when you started that medication, that parallel is absolutely worth discussing with your prescribing physician. There are alternative blood pressure medications in different drug classes that are equally effective and do not carry this particular side effect. I want to be unambiguous about something. Please do not stop or adjust any prescribed medication on your own, based on anything you hear in this video or anywhere else. That decision needs to happen in partnership with your doctor. What I am telling you is that this connection is real, it is medically recognized, and bringing it up in your next appointment is completely appropriate and could lead to a straightforward solution. Cause number 4, environmental irritants combined with dehydration. These two factors are worth discussing together, because they tend to amplify each other significantly. First, the environment. The air we breathe every day, particularly for those of us who live in urban areas, spend time near wood-burning fires, use strong household cleaning products, or live in climates that require heavy indoor heating or air conditioning, contains a range of low-level irritants that keep the airway in a state of mild, continuous inflammation. Tobacco smoke is perhaps the most damaging, both for active smokers and for those with regular passive exposure. Even in people who stopped smoking years ago, the recovery of the airway's natural clearing function is gradual and takes time. These environmental irritants trigger mucus production as a protective response, and because the exposure is continuous, so is the response. Now add dehydration to that picture. When your body is not receiving enough fluid, the mucus it produces changes in consistency. It becomes thicker, more adhesive, slower to move. Think about the difference between a thin salad dressing and a thick sauce. Same basic ingredients, but very different behavior. Well-hydrated mucus flows and clears efficiently. Poorly hydrated mucus sits and accumulates. Here is what makes this especially relevant for older adults. The sensation of thirst becomes less reliable and less responsive as we age. You can be in a meaningful state of dehydration and feel only mildly thirsty, or not particularly thirsty at all. Waiting for thirst to prompt you to drink is not a dependable strategy once you are past 50. A useful general target for most adults is approximately 30 milliliters of fluid per kilogram of body weight per day, drawing from all sources: plain water, herbal teas, broths, and water-rich foods like fruits and vegetables. And one habit that I genuinely recommend to every patient dealing with persistent morning throat symptoms: begin each morning with 1 or 2 glasses of plain warm water before anything else. Before your coffee, before breakfast, before your morning medications. Warm water first thing in the morning begins rehydrating your body after the overnight period, activates your digestive system gently, and immediately begins to loosen and thin the mucus that has been sitting in your throat while you slept. It is simple. It costs nothing. And the number of patients who report noticing a real difference from this single habit alone is genuinely notable. Before I bring everything together, I want to briefly address a few popular remedies that unfortunately do not deliver what most people hope for. Sugary drinks and honey lemon preparations are widely used for throat discomfort, and I understand why. They feel soothing in the moment. Honey does have genuine properties that can calm irritated tissue temporarily, but sugar itself draws moisture away from the throat lining, which can actually leave mucus thicker rather than thinner. And neither honey nor lemon addresses any of the 4 underlying causes we have discussed. Dairy foods are often blamed for creating mucus, and I want to give you an accurate picture here. Dairy does not generate new mucus in the body. However, for some individuals, the proteins in milk products can create a sensation of increased thickness or coating in existing mucus, particularly if there is any underlying sensitivity. If you have noticed a consistent pattern where dairy worsens your throat symptoms, it is worth removing it temporarily and observing whether your symptoms change. Now let me bring this all together into a practical plan you can begin right away. Tonight, Finish your last meal no later than 3 hours before you go to bed. Place a wedge under the headboard legs to create a gentle incline. Drink a full glass of warm water before you sleep. Tomorrow morning, before your coffee, before anything else, drink 1 or 2 glasses of warm water. This week, pick up a simple nasal rinsing device from your local pharmacy. They are inexpensive and widely available. And begin a morning and evening routine of warm saline nasal rinsing, using properly prepared boiled and cooled water. Also this week, take a few minutes to look back at your current medication list and think about whether any of your throat symptoms began or worsened around the time you started a particular medication. Bring that observation to your next appointment and ask your doctor to review it with you. And going forward, commit to consistent hydration throughout the day rather than waiting for thirst to guide you. Make it a deliberate habit. Your throat has been sending you a message. Persistent mucus is not a character flaw, and it is not something you simply have to learn to live with. It is your body's way of signaling that something in your daily environment, your sleep position, your eating timing, your hydration, or your medication regimen deserves a closer look. Now you have the information to look at it intelligently. In my next video, I will be discussing 5 specific foods that research suggests may actively support airway health and help reduce chronic inflammation, particularly relevant for adults over 60. It is a video you will not want to miss, so make sure you are subscribed and have your notifications turned on so you see it the moment it goes live. If today's video gave you something genuinely useful, I would ask you to share it with a friend or family member who has been dealing with the same frustrating throat clearing, particularly anyone who has been told it is simply their age. That share could make a real difference for them. And as always, if you have specific symptoms, new concerns, or questions about your own medications, please discuss them with your personal physician. Today's video is for education and general information, and your own doctor knows your full health picture in a way that no video ever can. I'm Dr. Andrew Parker, and thank you for watching Vital Health Insights. Stay healthy, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next video.